I want to point out that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I want to hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to yet another episode. Is this an episode?
I think
It's an episode of Energy Week, in which we review the week's news relating to energy, which I pick up spending probably about 3 hours every day reviewing news for my blog, geoharvey.wordpress.com, in the early morning. And I want to mention I also write for Green Energy Times, and so I've got all of this material that I just thought would be nice to share with people. I am George Harvey, and this is Tom Finnell.
Oh.
And we're ready to go.
I want to just interject something here. Some people have told me that sometimes I'm on here looking like I'm lost. And they're wondering, why am I here? And
it's because I'm lost and you're the only one who knows what to do.
Well, George does the heavy lifting here. He does the research, and he does thousands of hours of research.
Every day.
Every day. My function basically here is I'm engineering the show. I'm sitting around here playing with these mice here, bringing up the different pictures.
More mice than most people have to deal with.
So when I want you to look at George, I pick up George. If I want you to look at me, I pick up me. And sometimes I am lost. But I just wanted to explain what's going on.
This is a place where what you see is what you get. Okay, should we get into the news?
Yeah, you're on
right.
now. You're on.
Yeah, our first news item from the 21st of March, which was, I guess, last Friday, but it might have been last Thursday, I don't know. An NRC official said in a comment that Entergy staff did not follow proper procedures when they, quote, detonated a suspicious item, end quote, that resembled a pipe bomb inside the nuclear power plant compound.
You know,
What do we make of this?
I read about this in the newspaper.
It was in the Reformer, that's where I got that.
What the heck is going on here? Now, somebody got this story wrong. They had to, but what it said in the paper was they put some duct tape on it and a piece of string and pulled the string in an attempt to detonate the bomb. That doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
duct tape, string,
I don't know.
bombs. No, something happened that they're not really telling us. I don't think it was anything serious. I think it was something stupid. And they said, originally they said it was a pipe capped on both ends, which is very suspicious.
It's suspicious, yeah.
And then they said, no, it was somebody's sump pump.
How did a sump pump get on the compound?
So, that being said, the security in the electrical industry needs an awful lot of help. If we had some serious terrorists out there, they could do a job.
We will get into that later.
Yeah, we will.
I didn't actually include that item, but it's going to be talked about when we get to that other one.
It's very vulnerable.
It's very vulnerable, and not just to terrorists. So that's the news for the 21st. 22nd, a study published in the journal Energy and Environmental Science concludes that it takes more work, to make a combination of solar and storage sustainable than it takes to do the same with a combination of wind power and storage. And I believe what this is talking about is the fact that wind power is almost always going at a reduced level of output from its nameplate capacity, but solar goes at full power very often. In a sunny day, it's just going to go at full power. At night, it doesn't go. So the result of that is that solar has these deep swings.
That's part of it, but I read the article.
Okay.
And I tried to get my head around the math.
Okay.
And I came to the conclusion that I can't get my head around the math. Except enough to say it's believable.
Yeah.
But part of what's going on is the actual energy cost of producing these things from ground zero.
Okay.
And right now, the total energy cost of producing solar,
is higher.
Than
Yeah.
it is.
Although I think that'll change.
It's definitely changing
Yeah.
very rapidly.
Well, actually, wind power is going down.
Yeah, they're
price,
both
too.
going down.
But
solar's going down faster because it's higher.
We said that. We practiced that. Okay. There was an opinion piece that I just thought was interesting. Could a 500 house? Oh dear, 500 pound. What was it?
Gorilla?
No. What weighs 500 pounds? Has 4 wings, 4 legs, and is yellow?
I'll bite.
Two 250-pound canaries.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This is what went through my mind when I read 500. Could a 500 house, pardon me, ladies and gentlemen, that was a terrible joke, I should never have said it, community go off grid? That's the name of the article. And the point of this, let me finish reading this. The shift away from centralized to standalone community power solutions could be quick and dramatic, with most Australian regional towns able to function economically off-grid as soon as 2020. And that was in Renew Economy. And what they're talking about now, and I'm just seeing this over and over and over again in the news, is it's getting to be so cheap to get battery backup that we're getting to a point where in a couple of years it's going to be cheaper for a normal household, a town, a whatever, to have solar power and battery backup than it is to buy grid power.
It won't make sense to buy grid power anymore.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah, and so, a new paradigm is forming right before our eyes. Sorry about that canary thing.
I don't have any graphics on that story, but I do.
You don't have any graphics on canaries either.
No, but I can get that. Maybe 500 pounders I can't. But,
Okay, 23rd. 2 weeks ago, it looked like a record winter was over and a threatened shortfall in natural gas inventories had been avoided. Now the key question is whether this can be replaced, that is, the inventory can be replaced, in time for the next heating season or the ones after that. And my understanding is that the issue is that if we have a hot summer, natural gas inventories will be low going into the fall. And these inventories are built up over an annual cycle.
Yeah.
We've got a huge amount of storage for natural gas. They're using huge caverns in salt domes that come from mining salt. And they're pumping natural gas into these things, which, I'm sorry, I don't think any of this is a good idea.
yeah, I got a graphic up for this one. This came from that article.
Oh, did it?
That's Virginia.
Yeah.
That picture there is Virginia this winter.
Well, the natural gas inventory in the middle of March, they were talking about the possibility of running out of natural gas by the end of March this year. One cold snap away, and we're in trouble. Now they're saying if we have a hot summer followed by a cold winter next year, we're going to
we could run out of gas.
And if that happens, it's going to be dreadful, really, because it means that there's going to be choices made about who's going to get what gas is available.
Yeah.
And
the price isn't going to be the issue.
That's right. And most people don't realize that this is happening because the media is not really covering it. Anyway, next item, same day. That, by the way, that previous one came from Resilience, and this one comes from the Business Recorder. The government of Pakistan is in the process of implementing around 29 different wind projects as per a plan to enhance power production in the country. 2 projects with a capacity of 106.4 megawatts are already operating. On the 24th, California has set new records on solar energy production on March 8th, March 14th, March 15th, and March 16th. The grid operator has concluded it has to change its protocol for announcing record performance in solar power. So instead of announcing a new record being set on 50 megawatt increments, they're going to 500.
Yeah, I got a picture on that.
Oh my gosh!
If you want to take a look at it, it's
what is that big orange thing in the middle?
solar PV.
Wow!
And the very top is solar thermal. Now, this is California.
Yeah.
But you can see right in the middle of the day, they're getting a lot of production.
And this is something that's very important because that solar power is coming online at precisely the time demand is
They need it
highest.
most.
Yeah. It's
And
really
that blue
handy
thing on the right there is wind, which comes on mostly in California, comes on at night.
at night, yeah. Interesting how that's working. ExxonMobil will publicize the risks that stricter carbon emissions rules and limits will have on its business. In doing so, the largest publicly traded international oil and gas corporation in the world
I got that one too.
became the first such company to do this. There's been a group of stockholders that have been trying to get them to do this for years.
That's what's interesting about this story. The
Yeah.
stockholders made them do it.
Well, the stockholders didn't vote this, though. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe this was one of those things that came out of series.
I got it up
they're
here.
changed to, they're moving stockholders, big stockholders, to demand this.
I had the names of the stockholders groups. There was two of them, two major stockholders groups. But what they basically did, it says it seems like a huge deal for several reasons. The oil major, that's Exxon, is publicly acknowledging, publicly for the first time, the potential impact of carbon emissions limits on its business model. We're talking stranded costs here, or stranded.
Yep.
And revealing how it assesses the risk of stranded assets from climate change. And it did so at the bequest or behest of two shareholder groups. So they didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But these shareholder guys made enough noise at the meeting that they gave up. They did it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they're coming clean, guys.
And the world is changing. The United Nations believes that by 2050, 40% of the world population will be living in areas of severe winter stress. Severe water stress. It isn't my lack of glasses, it's my lack of a brain.
I've got something
the
on
only
that one,
way
too.
they see out of this is the development of alternate energy systems that require less water. Now, this is really interesting. Less water than conventional power plants.
Well, pretty much everything requires water.
Everything that's
in power.
thermal requires water.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is no fossil fuels. This is just separate from the issue about carbon emissions. No fossil fuel plants, but also no nuclear.
Yep, because that uses plenty of water too.
They use a lot of water, and wind and solar don't use water.
Yeah,
Hydropower makes a lot of sense in a situation like this if it's carefully placed with consideration for the land and the people and the water resources.
this was the image that came up from that article that you're talking about.
Yeah.
According to the United Nations, the world could be in for a severe water and energy crisis. And that's a dike in Holland.
Oh, is it? Okay, yes.
Which, incidentally, there's hydro potential there, which I don't think they're even using.
Yeah, you run the water through a hole in the dike, and
Yeah.
the one that the kid put his finger in.
Yeah.
Okay, he said it, not me. Yeah, there might be hydro potential there. I don't know what the Dutch would think of that.
Increased cravings for more water and energy could badly strain the planet's limited resources in the decades to come.
And they're worried about wars as a result of this.
Absolutely.
The Pentagon is worried about wars. The Pentagon says that climate change could be one of the biggest security problems we've got, and we've got to deal with it.
Yeah, this article doesn't mention it, but large corporations are trying to lock up water supplies in third world countries around the world, Africa, South America. In South America, a large corporation called the Bush family bought a piece of land in, I think it was Uruguay,
Oh.
that's bigger than Rhode Island,
Oh my gosh.
and it's sitting on top of the largest water aquifer in South America.
Wow.
And they did this about 20 years ago.
Wow.
When Bush Jr. was president, his daughters went down there and visited the ranch.
The ranch.
Yeah.
Okay. Uruguay is an interesting country, but I didn't realize that they had that aquifer under them.
Well, I bet you the Bushes knew it.
I bet they did. Yeah. Okay. March 24th marked the 25th anniversary of the Exxon Valdez oil spill,
I got that guy.
an event that altered Prince William Sound ecosystem perhaps forever. The once robust herring fisheries remain closed. Exxon's bill, $92 million, remains unpaid.
Still hasn't been paid.
That's
Yeah,
from the
that's
Anchorage Daily News. It's not entirely their fault. This is partly because the politicians in Alaska haven't got their act together to tell them what to do. So it may be that Exxon's been standing there with a check saying, guys, do you want this? And just not
It
gotten
may
the
be,
answer.
but I don't think so.
Probably not. You know, it's one of those things where you give everybody a break except for a few people.
Well, there's the Exxon Valdez over there, renamed
Making
the
a mess.
Oriental Nicety.
Oriental nicety.
And it apparently isn't running anymore.
Oh. Well,
It was the second largest oil spill in United States history.
yeah, well, that's sad. The largest, I think, was somewhere in the Southwest on land.
Was it really?
Yeah, I think so.
I
There was,
don't
I
really
think it
know
was
that, but
yeah, I looked it up at the time. I don't remember the details, but it was a long time ago. Well, on the 25th, we got this news item, which was probably late, but for us it was on the 25th. Green Mountain Power, based in Colchester, Vermont, and California Governor Jerry Brown, what would they have in common? Were among three, and I've forgotten who the third was, to receive a National Solar Energy Award, as Vote Solar announced Friday its 2014 Solar Championship Award recipients. So
Well, gotta
congratulations to Green Mountain
got to
Power.
give Green Mountain Power its due. They are very open to distributed energy, alternative energy, renewable energy,
Well,
particularly compared to some of the utilities out in the south and the west who are fighting it tooth and nail.
their statement about renewable power was that their job is to come up with a new business model, and that I think is an interesting thing. You know, there's some interesting people in this world, and I think the folks who, Mary Powell and the other folks up at Green Mountain Power, are interesting people.
Yeah, we're going to get somebody from Green Mountain Power on the show in the near future.
In the near future.
Yeah.
Promise. Okay. Also the same day, in new estimates released that day, the World Health Organization reports that in 2012, around 7 million people died. 1 out of 8 people who died during the course of the year in the world as a result of air pollution exposure.
Yeah, I got a nice air pollution picture.
A good
here.
air pollution picture.
Good air pollution picture. Let me pull it up here. It's interesting. We've shown some pictures of the Orient, particularly China, with people walking around with.
Is that an air pollution picture?
That's an air pollution picture.
Well, you got to put it on.
I'll get it up there.
Yeah, you don't need me. There you go. Air pollution, guys. Those look like cooling towers.
They are cooling towers. So what we're seeing coming out of those towers isn't really, strictly speaking, air pollution. It's
Steam.
water, steam.
Yeah.
But those 3 big chimneys, you can't see much coming out of it. If
But
you
they're
look
making
closely,
this.
the middle one definitely is emitting something. But what's coming out of those chimneys is the things you got to worry about. That's one of the reasons why they're so high.
Yeah. The old approach to dealing with air pollution was make the chimney higher.
Yeah.
It doesn't do much good for the planet. It may keep the people in the plant from suffocating, but
I don't know where this picture was taken. I believe it's somewhere in California. It's an old picture. That's like back from the 40s,
oh, really?
50s maybe.
Yeah.
But look at the size of that plant.
Yeah, that's big.
That's
Is
a
that
coal burning
plant. Okay. Wow. Okay. Now here is the thing that we were mentioning earlier, or a thing related to the thing mentioned earlier. And in fact, you know, as I look at this, I said that we were only going to have one item, but we may have two. A Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, that's FERC, analysis found a fairly easy way for terrorists to knock out all the electric grids in the United States, and not just for a short time, but for about a year and a half. That's not good for business, to lose power for a year and a half.
Well, we've talked about that in a different context, talking about the sun possibly doing it.
Yes, that's right.
But as I mentioned earlier in the show, these places are totally unprotected.
Well, they're getting protection now.
Even Yankee is quite vulnerable.
Yeah, somebody, and I've forgotten where this was, took a high-powered rifle and shot up a bunch of transformers out west. And I think they shot something like 17 of them before the...
They shot the transformers.
Yeah.
Wow.
And they were just popping them off one after another. And this went over a period of about an hour. They blew out 17 transformers before anybody figured out that there was something really wrong and sent out somebody to find out what was going on. And by the time they got there, the person who had been doing this was long since gone.
Well, you know, it's commonplace during hunting season for non-thinking hunters to pop off the insulators in high voltage.
Oh my gosh!
It happens every year. You know, it doesn't make the papers. It's so common. Yeah. It's just a stupid thing to do.
Just a stupid thing to do.
I mean, it's not that the guy has got any terrorists in mind, or even
it's not that the guy has got any brains.
he sees an insulator and says, "Oh, I wonder, can I hit that?"
Yeah.
Bingo.
How many sparks are going to come?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, but the federal government is getting very upset about that, and I think if we don't have it already in the as much as I dislike some of the federal stuff that they do about, you know, what was it that my kids were telling me? There was a sign in an air terminal saying no humor allowed. I was only joking. No humor allowed.
Take a look at some of the vulnerabilities right here in Brattleboro.
Yeah.
There's 3 substations in town. They're protected by a fence and a television camera.
Yes.
And a sign that says keep out.
Yes.
You take a look at the transmission lines all through Vermont. And what's next to the transmission lines? There's a road.
Yeah.
And who uses that road? Well, in the wintertime it's snowmobilers. In the summertime it's four-wheelers. They're there all the time.
Yep.
I would say it's impossible to build enough fences and put enough security in those transmission lines to protect them.
Well, there are ways of handling that. One of them is don't be dependent on transmission lines.
Well, that is the answer. Ultimately, the answer is distributed power. It's a
Right.
totally different grid model.
Yeah.
And large transmission lines are going to be a much less important part of that.
But what they said in this particular thing was the FERC had said that one industrial plant in the United States and 7 distribution centers for the grid, if those were attacked successfully,
I read that. Everything would be out.
Everything would be out for probably a year and a half. And I want to point out, lest we be alarming people, my own assessment of that kind of event is that it would take a level of coordination that would probably not be achievable by anybody.
Well, not by any individual or group of individuals.
I don't think a nation.
I would say
could do
maybe
it.
governments might.
I don't think a government could do it. If you think about Jimmy Carter sending those helicopters to try to get the people trapped in the embassy out, and how that went, I think there's too much that can go wrong. We're talking about 8 targets here. And
so your good news is that this would be probably too difficult.
I think this
to
would be
implement.
really, really hard to do. It's not something that is likely. On the
I
other
don't think
hand,
it's likely.
the next thing that we've got coming up, which would do the same thing, is not as unlikely. The Earth narrowly missed being hit by a massive coronal ejection. Do you happen to have a coronal ejection here, Tom? Let's see a coronal ejection. During the summer of 2012, according to a new study, the effect of such an event could damage the electric grid and electronic devices that could take years to repair.
Now look at that picture. There's a picture of the Earth. That's not the Earth.
Now,
that's just there to give us.
Move your mouse, and so people will see where it is that you're talking about. Ah, there we go. Okay, that is an image that indicates the relative size of the Earth compared to this thing that's under it, which is a bunch of mass of the sun. which is being ejected. And that mass, most of it will fall back onto the sun, but part of it just goes into space and travels through the solar system. And by golly, if you happen to get hit by it, you're going to be jangled.
I would think. From this article, or one very much like it, it seems that we missed such an ejection by 6 days. If it happened 6 days later, we'd have been in deep doo-doo.
The trajectory of this massive stuff was 6 days up or 6 days down on the path of the Earth around the sun. So the effect of this, if we get hit by a thing like that, is that any transformer that's online is likely to be fried. And so if people know that it's coming, then they could shut the transformers down and say, okay, the electric grid is going to be off for a day or two.
That they can do, and I'm sure they have plans to do exactly that.
Yeah, and we will note that the last time a coronal mass of this type came by was the time they're reporting, which they realized came by about a year after the event.
Say that again?
They didn't find out that coronal mass was coming until after it had already passed.
Oh. That's not going to help us much.
I may be wrong, but that's the impression I get from the article. They did a study, and the study found that there was this coronal event. And I don't think that bodes well. I have read elsewhere that usually if it's going to hit the Earth, they do know that it's coming, and they know many hours in advance, at least 8 and possibly as much as a couple of days.
I think it's a couple of days.
And
because this isn't radiation, this is particles.
This is a big mass.
So they take time to get to
here. Yeah,
Earth.
they do. It takes time to get here. And if they know it's coming, they can shut off the transformers, they can shut down the grid. And by the way, if this happens, folks, you got to protect your computers. And I don't know what you do about computers that are in cars. This is something that I find bothersome.
They're going to be destroyed. Or they could conceivably be destroyed.
I would hope they would not be, but you know, so many of our cars are controlled by computers now that...
The new ones are totally controlled.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm listening to, I can't think of the guy's name, the car doctor, I think he calls himself.
Yeah.
And he's talking about these computers. They literally control everything in a modern car.
Yeah, and
the average street corner mechanic can't fix it.
That's right. I had a Prius, and the car would not accelerate. So I called the garage, and they looked at it. And obviously, this is a Toyota dealer, and they said that the problem with that car was the accelerator computer. There was a computer that controlled the accelerator.
Just for the accelerator.
Just for the accelerator. When I got that car, I was told that car had more computer power in it, and this is a 2001 Prius. This is the first group sold in the United States. They said that the first mission to put men on the moon had less computer power, the whole thing, than that car did. And you know, this speaks to the changes in computers.
There's probably more computing power in this thing.
Do you know how much memory you've got in that?
I think it's 16 gigs.
All right, 16 gigabytes. All right, each byte of the 16 billion bytes you've got, more than 16 billion, has 8 bits.
Yeah.
All right. So what's 8 times 16? 128. So it's 16 gigabytes is 128 billion bits. And the first computer I worked on had core memory, which cost $1 a bit.
Wow.
That's 128 billion dollars you've got in your pocket.
And my first computer had 64K.
My first computer had 16.
Can you top this? Do I hear 8?
My first computer, the first computer I had experience with had core that I told you about. The first computer I bought for $1,000 had 16K of RAM, and it had an 8-bit processor that ran at at a million hertz, at a million hertz, yes, 1 megahertz. And it was as powerful as that big mainframe that took the entire apartment. And now we've got computers that are 10,000 times as powerful as that you can go down to Kmart and buy, or I guess, I don't know if Kmart sells them, but Kmart's gone, I guess, isn't it?
They're still around, but there are very few of them left.
Yeah. Anyway, we're off subject here. The Earth, the effect of this, if the transformers got fried, the electric grid would be down. There is no factory in the United States making these transformers.
That's correct.
If it hit the United States, it would probably also hit other countries just as hard. And the countries that do have the facilities to make the transformers undoubtedly would be supplying themselves before they supplied us.
From what I've heard, Europe is far more advanced along the line of protecting in this event than we are.
Right. We can protect those transformers. We can protect the computers. We can, all of this can be protected. There's a thing called a Faraday cage. Mm-hmm. And when I first started working with PCs, there was a computer of a type called it wasn't called a Storm, but it had a name like that, which had a Faraday cage. And they were putting the Faraday cage on it not to protect that, but to protect the computer, so that a person typing on it would not be sending a signal out, so that people could read what was being typed from a block away. But this was government stuff. But it was the point is, by taking proper measures, we can avoid this kind of thing. They were worried about it in 2012. They were really worried about it in 2013. We're at the part of the cycle where it's becoming rapidly less likely to happen, and it'll be 10 or 12 years before we get into that part of the cycle again. Hopefully people will be bright enough to do something about that before it happens. Looking at the history of the United States, I would say the chances of our actually accomplishing that are about 1 in 10. The first event of that type that was noticed, by the way, was one that fried the entire telegraph system.
That was, they called it the Carrington event.
Carrington event.
1853 or something
59.
like that. 59, yeah, wow.
I'll forget that tomorrow, but anyway, they had, telegraph keys that were disconnected from their power sources were spontaneously sending transmissions and receiving transmissions, and sparks jumping from the telegraph wires were setting things on fire.
And the messages were obscene.
Were they? This is Mother Nature speaking. I want you to know what we think of you. Okay, let's get out of this. We're going to jump to the next day. 26th. A bill repealing the renewable energy standards for utilities companies won approval in the Kansas Senate with a vote of 25 to 15. The vote was scheduled to go to the House next. The current standard requires utility companies to receive 20% of their energy from renewable sources by 2020. And I'm not going to comment on that, and neither are you, because this is going to come up again.
My lips are sealed.
Next item, solar energy now costs the same as conventional generated electricity in Germany, Italy, and Spain, a report revealed. The research found, however, that high installation costs were impeding other countries, including the United States, folks, from achieving grid parity. And the fact that we've got installation costs doing that is largely because of problems that relate to laws that have to do with permitting and stuff like that. The cost of advertising, and in addition to that, other soft costs. And if you want to lower your electric bill, you get rid of those.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of lobbying going on.
Yeah, there is.
That's preventing this stuff from happening.
Yes, there's that. As we just saw reading that thing about Kansas.
Yeah.
Of course, that was funded, I think, by the Koch brothers and others who want to make sure.
Well, there's that ALEC out there. They're getting into energy now.
Yeah.
And that's Koch brothers' money.
That is. Wholesale power prices in Germany have plunged 34% since 2010 amid record output from renewables, while electric demand last year slumped to the weakest level since 2009, according to energy researcher AG Energiebilanzen. And that part of the reason why the demand is slumping is because they're taking up efficiency.
That was what I was going to ask you.
Yeah. Part of the reason is because people are generating their own power.
Yeah.
Companies are going off grid, and you know this business
Big
of
time.
let's go off grid
Big
is just
time.
a big deal.
The Swedish
And-
firm IKEA is putting solar panels on virtually everything they own.
Yeah,
Worldwide.
absolutely. Worldwide. And the cost of batteries is going down, so
Yep.
they're figuring that the battery market in Germany is going to jump by several 100% in the next 3 or 4 years, which means that people really will be entirely separated from the grid if that's what they want to do. Well, anyway.
And
Now, this one is cute. You've got a picture of rail power storage.
yes, I certainly do. I was just thinking of it as you were talking about
Yeah,
energy storage.
This is fun. We could do this in Vermont, but we won't, I don't think, because we've got better
I
things
got
to
to
do.
find this one, but it's
Okay.
it's here.
I
Here it
will
is.
read it.
Here we go.
Okay.
Here we go.
Rail power storage is conceptually simple. During low demand periods, power is used to pull a chain of weighted train cars uphill. And there they will sit, losing no power to degradation until needed in a high demand period when their return downhill produces power. And there we've got a picture of a train.
There's this is an experimental. They're trying this out.
Well, it's going to work. I mean, it's
But you can see it's an electric train.
yeah.
It's got to be an electric train for this to work, and there's a third rail there. And way in the background, you can see
All those wind
a whole
turbines.
bunch of wind turbines.
Wow, look at that.
Now, I'm not sure whether this is a special car they had made for this or whether this is some kind of a hopper car, because the article said that this technology was first developed in Australia to bring ore out of mines, surface mines.
Wow.
So they load these cars up with ore and drive them uphill for 6 miles or so. So the technology exists to make the cars, and it's just a matter of it's it's pump storage, but in a different way.
Yeah, it is.
I think it's brilliant.
Yep. And it could be done anywhere there's hills, although in this particular, as you pointed out before the show started, this particular shot shows you it's pumped storage in a land that has very little water. And so this could be done anywhere that you've got steep grades, long hills, and so forth.
In the article, they're mentioning 3,000 feet of elevation above the start of their trip.
3,000 feet of elevation.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're going uphill a long time, and they
Yeah.
sit up there in the top of the hill till they need them,
Yeah.
and then they run them downhill.
Yeah.
And regenerative braking feeds it right back into the grid through the same third rail
Wow.
that they use to bring the car up.
So if you have power plants that are generating power that's not being used, and there's excess power on the grid, this thing goes uphill. And if there's not enough power on the grid,
Exactly.
it goes downhill.
And the article mentions that each car will be equipped with a 2 megawatt generator. So they're not tiny, these things. These are pretty big.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. On the 27th. Is today the 27th? I think it is.
Today is the 27th.
Now, I want to warn the audience, you may be viewing on a day other than the 27th, but we're stuck in the 27th. This is Groundhog Day for us, which is over and over. The First Solar expects its average manufacturing cost to fall by nearly half, from an average of 63 cents per watt in 2013 to 35 cents per watt in 2018. That will bring the total cost of a module, including racking and inverters, and I think must be the manufacturing cost, from around $1.59 a watt to below $1 a watt by 2017.
I think they're talking about installed on your house.
No, I don't think so.
Because I think they're below $1 a watt in the manufacturing now.
No, they're not.
They're not, huh? Okay.
In the manufacturing, yes, but you as a homeowner, if you're a homeowner, can buy solar panels just the panels,
The panels, yeah.
for prices that are not very far above 63 cents a watt. And in fact, I've seen prices below that, but they were panels that were being sold in sales of one type or another. The installed price is going to be significantly above that.
So you got to figure out how to install them.
Yeah, well, if you're doing it, if it's a do-it-yourself deal, that's going to be very low. But if you're talking about buying installed materials, we'll talk about that. If we can get Peter Thorell in here, I'm hoping he'll be our next guest. He can tell us about installed costs.
Yeah, I got a picture here of an uninstalled solar installation.
An uninstalled installation. How do you do that? Oh, there you go. That's how you do
I'll
it.
try and pull it up here. This is in Scituate, Mass.
Scituate. I used to live down near Scituate. It looks like it's covered with snow.
And the article is about ALEC, who we just mentioned.
Oh, really?
Solar industry defeats ALEC net metering attacks in Utah and Washington.
Yeah, well.
But this is a solar panel assembly being put together. They haven't put the panels in yet. So all of this is the physical supports that they're putting up. Now, you don't have to go this way, but that's what Scituate is doing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it looks like everything is covered with snow, but if you look at that carefully, you'll see that that's obviously a summertime.
That's summertime,
job.
yep.
Yeah. Okay. A measure to repeal the state's 2009 renewable energy standards for power generation was rejected Wednesday by the Kansas House of Representatives by a vote of 77 to 42. Now, that was the same one that was passed the previous day. And
okay, we're catching up now.
Yeah. I'm just wondering, did the House of Representatives do that on purpose the following day just to thumb their nose at the Senate? Maybe.
I don't know anything about the politics out there, but that's believable.
Yeah. This was despite critics who argued the requirements drive up utility bills and unfairly push one industry over another. Well, you know, I think if you're going to, there are ways that you can unfairly push one industry over another that are kind of reasonable. You know, let's push legal industries over organized crime. How about that? Is that unfair?
Well, it depends on what you mean by organized crime. I mean, I consider Wall Street to be organized crime.
Well, there you go. Okay, and our last item for today, and this is kind of cool also. Pacific Gas and Electric Company announced an important milestone for California's renewable portfolio standard. I can speak part of the time. The utility delivered 22.5% of its power from eligible renewable resources in 2013 and is on track to meet the state's clean energy goals for 2020.
I think that's basically this.
Yeah. Now, one of the things about this is they say it delivered 22.5% for the first time. That's for the whole year.
Yeah.
And the previous record level for a year was below 20%. So this is a significant growth.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to be 40% by 2020. It's believable that they would achieve that. They'll have to grow a little bit faster. They'll have to continue that. But I think as you know, as the ability to build and install renewable materials is developed, the installation will happen faster.
Well, we can see the trend. We can say which way
Yep.
things are going. And
Yep.
there's so many bright people working on different aspects of this. Some of them are going to hit on some good solutions. Some of them have already.
Mm-hmm. Okie doke. Well, that's the news. And now what should we do, Tom? Do you have pictures to show?
I got a couple of pictures that were related to what you said.
Okay.
Maybe they weren't directly.
Let's look at them.
But I linked to them. I thought this was interesting because it's a picture of a geothermal installation, geothermal ground. They found a place In this case, where there's hot water under the earth. Let me get it up there.
Okay, now where is this?
Well, it's Malta, but I don't know what state that's in.
It's where?
Malta. It's not
Malta.
not the island of Malta. This is definitely might be
Malta, California.
California. Might be Utah. There's mountains in the background, and I
Yeah.
failed to record where Malta
okay.
was. And
That's
I did
okay.
look it up, and I forgot.
People should know about this, that geothermal, there's a number of different kinds of geothermal. There was a fellow who asked me, George, what do you think about geothermal? And I said, if you're talking about Vermont, I think it's a bad idea. And then I realized maybe what he was talking about was something different from what I was thinking. And in fact, that was the case.
was.
He was talking about geothermal heat for a house, which I think is an excellent idea. But there's geothermal, such as probably
Geothermal
this one.
earth.
There's geothermal which you're using for producing power, where you go down a mile or two.
There's hot water down there.
There's hot water. There's hot rock. You can use the hot rock to heat water,
Like Iceland.
like Iceland. And in fact, in Iceland, they have actually drilled right into the magma, molten rock, to get geothermal power. There's another way of doing it, which is to, and this could be done in Vermont, I believe, and that would be to drill down. You drill down a well, you drill down another well near it, you force cold water down that first well into the hot rock, and it makes the rock contract, and that makes the rock crack. When the rock cracks, the water will flow over to the other well, and it'll come up again. And when it comes up, it's hot.
This is similar to what we just talked about, but it's a different variation of it.
It's a different variation, and it's called enhanced geothermal. And it is, if you think about it, it sounds suspiciously like fracking.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And in
So what are
fact,
the second order consequences of this?
well, the people who are in favor of it point out that they're not using chemicals, they're just using water.
Well, it's a step in the right
It's
direction.
a step in the right direction. The second thing is they're talking about two wells that are not very far apart. They're only about maybe 100 yards apart, maybe less. And so the amount of cracking in the earth that has been done is really kept to a minimum. The detractors who are dealing with this look at it and they say, no, that's not the history of this thing doesn't say that it's safe. For example, there was the city of Basel in Switzerland tried doing this. They built a geothermal plant, and then when it started producing power, people complained about the earthquakes.
I was going to say it's earthquake potential. Yeah.
So they shut it down at a loss. And from my point of view, I don't mind people experimenting with a thing like this, but I don't think that we should buy into it wholesale until
Not until it's been worked. The bugs have been worked out.
Until the bugs have been worked out, or alternatively, we've discovered that it really is not going to give us what we want, especially considering that, the DOE says that Vermont can get about 15% of its power from biomass, and about, I forget the number, 30% or 40% or whatever it is from hydro, and about 135% of what we need from wind, and about 600 and something percent of what we need from enhanced geothermal, which we were just talking about, and about 1,000% of the power that we need from solar. Now, enhanced geothermal in that picture looks like it could be an important part. And I wouldn't want to abandon it just because people in Switzerland had problems with it. But at the same time, we've got enough power from solar to give us everything we need times 10. And we've got enough power available from wind to give us whatever we need probably when the solar isn't working. And when neither of those is working, we've probably got enough power from other things to make up the background. But another thing that I want to mention too about wind power, I'm just right now writing an article for Green Energy Times about a town in Kansas called Greensburg. And Greensburg got wiped out by wind. They were hit by
a windstorm wiped them out.
Yeah.
Okay.
They are a little city. I think, I don't know, but I think they're the the county seat of Kiowa County, but they're a little city. They're 1.75 square miles. This is not big. You know, so if you're in the middle of the city, there's nothing as far as a mile away from you that's in the city. It had a population of 1,500. It got hit by an F5 tornado that covered the whole thing, and they had it was over 200-mile-an-hour winds. 95% of the buildings were flattened. The other 5% were extremely damaged, and I don't know that any of them survived. When the building inspectors came in and said this has to be cut down and that has to be cut down, they may have cut them all down. But when the town council just met and there were very few deaths because they had 20 minutes warning.
And they have storm celars there too.
Yeah, they do. But the town council met, and one of the first things they decided was that all of the city's buildings had to be built to LEED Platinum standards. And there were a lot of businesses and other organizations that followed suit and went to LEED certified buildings. Now, with a population of about 800, this town has the highest number of LEED certified buildings per capita of any city. I should say it's a city of any city in the world. And but one of the things that they did was they put in a lot of wind power, and they put in a wind farm of 10 turbines totaling 12.5 megawatts, 10 miles from the 3 miles from the city limits. But they also, people in the city who owned businesses or ran organizations looked at this and they said, well, why shouldn't we have our own? And the city did not discourage anybody from putting in wind turbines. And there wasn't
privately owned.
Privately owned. So the John Deere dealership has 2, and Best Western has 3, and the high school or whatever the school is has 1, and the Arts Center, which they're very proud of, has 3 wind turbines and a bunch of solar. But the one picture that I think really is interesting about this is, and it's one that we'll have at some point in the future, the hospital has a wind turbine, which is so close to the hospital that the employees have to walk under it to get into the building because it's between the employee parking lot and the hospital. So here is this wind turbine that is, what are you clicking on there?
This is a different town.
Okay.
But they did something similar.
Oh, yeah. Now these are different kinds of turbines too.
I'll try and locate them with the mouse here. Let's see.
These are vertical wind turbines.
Yeah. Can you see the mouse?
I can see it. I hope the people.
That's a vertical wind turbine, and there's another one there.
They're small. Can you tell about how tall those things are?
Offhand, I can't. About maybe 3 times as high as a light pole.
Okay, so they're fairly tall. Okay, these vertical wind turbines are interesting because they're small. They're small wind turbines. But
that's a playground right there.
Yeah, you can site these things right next to...
That's a park right there.
Yeah. I mean, here are 2 wind turbines sited within feet of a park and a playground.
But they're vertical axis.
Yes.
So they turn this way, they don't make any noise, and the wind can blow from any direction that they're going to turn.
That's right.
And with only 2 small ones, they're only using it to provide the power for the lights of this little village.
Right, right.
The street lights.
Street lights.
But it's neat, you know.
Yeah, it is. It's very neat. And you can put these things in cities because since they don't care what direction the wind is coming from, the wind can change direction radically very fast. And the turbine
doesn't care.
Doesn't care. It just keeps right on going. So anyway, Greensburg, Kansas has. I called the Department of Tourism and asked them, the woman there who was in charge of it, how many wind turbines there are in Greensburg, Kansas, right in the city. Mm-hmm. And she said, oh, well, let's see. And then she was counting them off. There's this one and that one and this one. There's 14 or 15. There are 14 or 15 medium-sized to large-sized wind turbines
right in downtown.
Right in the city. And they're right next to things. And I talked to a woman who is the woman who answers the phone at City Hall, and I said, "Don't you get complaints about the noise?" And she said, "Oh, I would think that I would get the complaints if there were any. I've never heard one."
That's interesting.
And she said, "Let me check and see if anybody has heard any complaints." And she walked around the City Hall asking people there, "Have you heard any complaints?"
That's interesting.
And nobody had ever heard of any complaints. And I said, "Well, how close are they?" And she said, "Well, they're pretty close. I've got one 2 blocks down from me." They're all over the place. When I say Best Western has got 3 turbines, I mean, if you're going to
They're in the parking lot.
Yeah, basically, that's right. They're everywhere. The hospital has a wind turbine. This kind of gives a new twist, as you might say, talking about wind turbines, to the idea of noise bothering people, keeping them from doing things. So,
Is it the noise that's bothering people, or is it the annoyance that's bothering people?
I think it's the fact that they feel disempowered.
Yeah, it's as much psychological as anything else.
The Australian Medical Association said it's psychological.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah.
As far as they were concerned, and you know, they've been fighting this battle. We'll just see. You know, the people in Kansas have decided that they're not going to turn away from renewables, their renewable standard. And Koch Industries has been putting quite a lot of time and money, or the Koch brothers, I should say, from what I understand, have been putting a lot of time and money into trying to revoke the renewable energy standards.
As I said earlier, this outfit, ALEC, which is controlled by the Kochs, is now starting to attack generation.
Actually, they're attacking solar.
Solar, yeah.
They're attacking solar. Every form of renewable power is under attack. And one of the things that I've seen in the news more than once is that the idea that is being promoted that solar power is not safe to have on your roof because it will, if the fire company is called and they need to use water to fight a fire, the firemen will be electrocuted by the solar power.
Oh, did anybody ever think about shutting it off?
Well, did anybody ever think about the idea that electricity does not get shut off when there's a fire unless the fire company shuts it off, usually.
Yeah.
Most homeowners don't, run down to the basement.
No, of course not. Oh, it's a fire. I got to shut the power off.
Yeah, that's right.
That doesn't happen.
And so
Let's get your butt out of there.
That's
right.
What happens. And so I think this is a specious argument, and it's specious like a lot of the other arguments. The arguments against wind, and there are arguments against hydro, and there's arguments against everything. And I argue against things. I argue against fossil fuels because we're in trouble because of fossil fuels. I argue against nuclear because nuclear is not going to provide for us. And as a matter of fact, if you think about that, the safety of nuclear plants is something they tout. I don't buy it. I don't buy the idea.
We're not
of
allowed
safety.
to talk about that.
We're not? Oh. Then I'm not allowed to say, out of 480 nuclear power plants that have ever gone online, well, Chernobyl and 3 Mile Island and the sodium reactor experiment just outside of
Chicago.
No, that was outside of Los Angeles. And it says experiment in the name, but they were putting power on the grid. And Fermi, which is outside of Detroit, and 3 in Japan, and 1 at Chapel Cross in Scotland, and 1 at Bohunice in Czechoslovakia, and 1 at Greifswald in East Germany, and 2 in Saint-Laurent in France. It's 12 nuclear reactors. You can.
I'm glad they're so safe.
Yeah, 12 of them have melted down.
Wow.
12. Now, a couple of them, one of them we know blew up. I suspect another one also blew up. I just don't see the explanation for anything else in Japan. But some of these, like Fermi, melted down. They tried to clean it up and restart the reactor, which is a job that took years. But 12 out of 480 is 2.5% of all of the reactors have melted down.
This isn't just failing. This is a big-time failure.
This is a big failure, and when it really speaks to And they were talking initially about one core damage event per 10,000 reactor years. We've had 16,000 reactor years, and the standard has been raised. And it turns out that they're talking about 1 in 20,000 now, and 1 in 50,000, and the actual experience in the field has been 1 in 1,350. So the core damage events are happening more than 10 times as fast as they should have, and there's a reason for that, because the calculations that they do don't include human error, because you can't enumerate that. So the biggest thing, actually the only thing that has caused these problems, and when they say 1 in 20,000, they don't mean 1 in 20,000, they mean 1 in 20,000 unless some fool gets his hands on it. And when they come to us now with a new generation of reactors, they say these are foolproof. And I suspect that what they really mean is these are foolproof unless some fool gets his hands on it. So anyway, we are at the end of our hour. And I've been lecturing people, which is very sad. Got a parting message, Tom?
Well, I had some more stuff I wanted to talk about.
Well, let's do it, actually. It's not. Let's just go on. Okay?
Well, we started talking about geothermal.
We got to say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody who's on the broadcast, and for those people who are watching on the webcast,
we'll be here a little longer.
We'll be here a little bit longer.
Yeah.
We'll see Tom's pictures and hear what he.
We started talking about geothermal.
Yeah.
And I showed you a picture of earth-based geothermal.
Yes.
And then you went on to some variations on that.
I hijacked your discussion, I admit.
And there's actually some parts of Vermont which use earth-based geothermal to heat homes and been doing it for a long time.
Well, no, wait a minute. Are we talking about drilling way down?
Not way, way down. No.
So this is earth-based geothermal, and are they using heat pumps?
No.
They're not. Interesting. So
I'm not. It's been a long time since I saw this. I think it's somewhere up around Perkinsville, somewhere not too far from Springfield.
Okay.
There's a whole little area there where a whole bunch of houses were built right after World War II.
Oh,
and
wow.
They were heated by hot water from the ground.
Very cool.
And from what I understand, it was all low-tech. A local well-built driller drilled down, found the hot water. They pump it through the house through radiators. You know, and there's maybe a dozen homes in this area here that were capable of doing that.
That's amazing.
I don't know where it is anymore. I probably couldn't find it. I think I remember when I first heard about it, I was thinking about buying a piece of property in Vermont. And I was being toured around by real estate people.
Yeah.
And they took us, myself and my two friends they took us through this area and pointed it out. So that's all I really know about it. But But anyhow, there's other forms of geothermal that we haven't touched base on.
Right.
The big one happening in Vermont right now is air-based geothermal.
Air-based.
Air source geothermal.
You're talking about air source heat pumps, though.
Air source. Well, but they're geothermal. They're heat pumps.
There's ground source heat pumps and air source heat pumps.
Yeah.
And the ground source heat pumps, you dig a trench